You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometime, you just might find you still can't get what you want. Oh God, this shit's so transparent. You kick out or you try to persecute people who are in this country that employers like to hire that are undocumented. You're all enthused about getting them out. And those were the people that did the work that very few, quote unquote, white people will do. And then you whine about the declining birth rate. Ah, shit. The same, and it's all originated from Ben Wattenberg and his ilk. I talked about that several times in these videos over the past 6 years or 5 years that I revived this channel. But the train left the station 50 years ago, and it ain't coming back. Women aren't going to do this stuff anymore. They will go without any of it, without men at all, before they will ever go back to that bullshit of having 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 babies. They ain't going back to that. And the very people who peddle this stuff are vehemently anti-union, and it was the unions that pushed for this family wage crap that quote unquote encouraged women to go back into the home. Well, actually, that was a little part of it, but what happened in the 50s, as I've said, or right after World War II, is women were fired from the factories of the jobs that they filled while the men went overseas to fight in World War II. And they were wholesale fired. And what to do with them? Well, put all these policies in to encourage all this reproduction. That happened in Europe too. You know, it wasn't really feminist or anything like that. It was to try to rebuild the populations of those countries that were so decimated thanks to Hitler and Mussolini and Tojo, I think was his name, whatever the hell it was, in Japan. But all of those countries had to rebuild. And yes, even the United States had to rebuild a little bit because they lost a lot of soldiers. And that era ain't ever coming back. It ain't ever coming back. So what do they have here? This is a thing for today. Yes, he did. He dubbed himself the fertilization president. Sounds like RFK Jr. has had a egregious effect on him. Oh God, that's a whole nother video. But I can't do better than Lawrence O'Donnell did when he raked RFK Jr. over the coals the other night on his show. And this isn't conservative. There's no conservative here. This is radical right advocates say he's done little so far to publicly back that up. And of course, what motivates this is that nonsense of, kicking the immigrants out, kicking the undocumented out, because it has to do with the great replacement theory, and it's all bullshit. All this stuff is bullshit. So they're trying to reverse it, and nothing's ever going to happen. A top priority is a pronatalist or family policy summit that spotlights the U.S.'s declining fertility rate, which is worldwide, not coming back. Other asks, which typically run through the White House's Domestic Policy Council, including loosening regulations on daycares and child car seats, further increasing the child tax credit, it's not going to happen. and requiring insurers to cover birth as well as pre- and postnatal care at no out-of-pocket cost, that's not going to encourage it, because the men in these situations don't do jack shit to help the women. So the women aren't even, they're not just more increasingly more likely not to have kids, they're not partnering with men because they're sick and tired of being dumped on. And there's lots and lots of people on social media who talk about this. There's that version Boogie, I think, Bougie. God damn, I always get her damn name wrong. But there's that one, Bourbon Bougie. Sorry, I can't ever remember it. And then that YV Edit. There's a couple of younger female content creators that talk about this all the time. That talk about the birth rate and the plummeting birth rate, and it should continue to plummet because men ain't doing shit. And women have finally woken up. So this isn't going to change. It's not going to change the trajectory. It's never going to change. It's never going to change. And so they're upset, the radical right is upset that he hasn't done more on one of his campaign's most animating issues. He didn't care about it. All he cared about was trying to stay out of prison. That's the only reason he ran for president. The lack of movement threatens to dampen enthusiasm among parts of the Republican Big Tent coalition. Sure, it's a big tent. From A to B. You got the religious right nut jobs on one hand, and you got the libertarian idiots on the other. That's from A to B. That's not exactly a big tent. It's a damn skinny tent. Actually, it's not even a tent at all. It's more like a sleeping bag. And anyway, I think there are people, including the vice president and people in the White House, who really want to push pro-family stuff, said Tim Carney, a senior fellow, American Enterprise Institute, who recently wrote Family Unfriendly, a man, of course, who wrote this, a book that's become popular in radical right circles. But it hasn't risen to the forefront of actual decision-making tree because it isn't possible to bring back the 1950s, you dope. That was a one-off, and it ain't coming back. And it doesn't matter if you limit abortion or contraception. It ain't going to matter because women ain't going to go back to doing that shit again. They aren't going to give up the ability to earn money. They're not going to give up their education. They're not giving up any of that. They're not giving up their hobbies. They're not giving up anything. Just because you guys have a fantasy, a 1950s fetish that was never based on any kind of reality. It's like none of them ever heard of Betty Friedan's The Problem That Has No Name. And they want to bring that back, which was boredom, which was lack of identity. That's what affected millions and millions of women who stayed home during the 50s. But they're trying, and it ain't gonna work. And now they're saying they're deliberating in its next moves now that the GOP's tax and policy bill passed. Well, nothing's gonna happen. Nothing's gonna change. It's taking a two-pronged approach, addressing financial pressures and infertility issues. There's no infertility issue that prevent people from having children. Neither is the reason. It's because women aren't doing it anymore. It isn't even about couples. Women aren't even coupling up. More and more are not because the men are garbage. It's not going to matter. School choice, parental rights, that's all bullshit. Kin and faith-based childcare, none of that shit's going to help. None of it. And let's hope that somehow the Democrats get back in there because this stuff is just based on absolute crapola. And this is the horse shit here. Demographic collapse has been the global warming of the new right. No, they've got a fantasy of the great replacement theory. That's what these far-right idiots are worried about. They're worried about the white birth rate. They don't care about the birth rate of people of color or anything else. This is all about the white birth rate, because they believe that 19th century horseshit of eugenics, that the whites are superior. But the problem is women aren't doing it anymore. And it ain't none of this stuff that they do will ever bring women back, because they never wanted to be there in the first place. They were forced into it. And they're not going to do it again. And it doesn't matter what they try to do. It's not going to get the birth rate back up. Oh, yeah. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy instructed his agency to give preference and competitive grants to communities with higher than average birth and marriage rates. Utah. And that won't work either. Yeah, it's just bullshit. You know, it's all bullshit. Here's the nut of the crux of it. The U.S. birth rate has been declining since the baby boom ended in the early 1960s, falling from 3.65 births per woman in 1960 to 1.599 in 2024, according to the CDC's National Center for Health Statistics. There are similar trends across high-income nations. It's almost everywhere in the world except certain countries in Africa. In part, the result of easier access to contraception, changing societal values, favoring careers over having children, and high costs of living. It's because women have options besides standing on street corners and having shacks to keep clean, as Andrea Dworkin would have said. Anyway, to me, it says here, there's no agreed upon solution. I've skipped a lot of this because we all know this shit. There is no agreed upon solution to the problem of a declining birth rate. Hungary is held up, a dictatorship, is held up as a model for pronatalists for its family-friendly policies. But its birth rate remains low, despite exempting women with 4 or more children from paying income tax, among other incentives. They're not going to do it. The birth rate also remains low in Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, and Finland that have generous paid parental leave and heavily subsidized childcare. Those were put in after World War II to build the population up. But that, that's not going to do anything because big families are incompatible with women's rights. So hence, they're squawking. The far right squawking about taking women's rights away. More of them away. But it's not going to change it. Because women are sick and tired of being dumped on. Anyway, this lengthy article, I will... And it kind of repeats itself, like I do, about IVF. And for decades... right-wingers led the GOP's charge on families, arguing in support of policies that promote two-parent heterosexual families. But declining birth rates, coupled with broadening of the GOP coalition, what's broadening? Has broadened the lens to focus on increasing the birth rate, a new pronatalist tinge. How are they broadening the GOP coalition? What have they broadened? It's the same old assholes that have been in there since Reagan. The religious nut jobs and the idiot libertarians. Nothing's changed. There is no broadening of any coalition. So that's a horseshit thing there too. And of course, IVF's not popular with anti-abortion nutters. It isn't a fertility problem. A fertility rate and birth rate are not synonymous. And it's not. It's because men are garbage. Because men as a group are garbage. And women aren't bothering with it anymore. And if the world goes extinct, so be it. So be it. Turn it back to the trees and the ocean and the whales and the deer and the chipmunks and the birds. Turn it all back to them, because the human race, I think, is on a collision course with itself. And truthfully, men have nothing but themselves, nobody else but themselves to blame, because women aren't going to do this crap anymore. And old Ben Shapiro, oh cripe. He says, I don't think the problem of people not having enough kids is a problem of economics. I think it is very often a line that is used in order to promote a larger government. See, this is it. Larger government. Well, they ain't gonna do it. This is predominantly a religious problem. It's a cultural problem. We don't want it. We're sick and tired. Women are sick and tired of being dumped on. Take a look. Take a look where the problem is. But it's already too far gone. But it ain't going to happen. And this is all for naught. But anyway, it's a long, drawn-out article. It's repetitious, and absolutely nothing is going to reverse the trend. So anyway, on that happy note, I am done.